Okay, so I believe it is working now. Let's see if I'm audible. Okay, so let's try something new today. Not new for me, but yeah. So basically, we'll be trying to go through this whole documentation today and see what we can do. Okay, so what is PowerQuery? PowerQuery is a data transformation data preparation. So basically, you can connect PowerQuery with multiple sources. So PowerQuery is the language which uses encode as a programming language, but it has a functionality where you do not need to write everything in a programming language. It will automatically convert all your steps which you complete. It will directly translate it to encode language and it will automatically do that work for you. But of course, it is good to know encode language also because if you try to do some advanced calculation, you will be needing that. Currently, to Power Query experience, I'm running Power Query online and then Power Query desktop. We'll be using Power Query desktop. Okay, transformations. Using data for we can connect. We can get the data and transform the data in the same way, but instead of sending the output to the Power BI or Excel, you can store the output in other storage options such as details and so information. So basically, this part is saying that it is used, this M formula language is used in Power Query. I'll just show you some samples. So let's try this. So I've downloaded the sample data. This file has the sample data, and this is an offline file. But as we saw that we can connect Power Query to multiple sources, but of course we'll be using some local sources because we do not have access to the online sources. So this particular file has the source data, the financial service, but I'll be using the Power Query in this testing file. Okay, now I can get into data and then I can connect this particular file to the source file. And as you can see, there are multiple sources available which we can use to get the data. But right now we'll be using this particular option because our data is saved in the Excel file. So I'll connect this particular file to that particular Excel file. And this. So this is the file which has the source data. Now this is the PowerQuery. I'll just close it now. Then we can see all the data has been imported into this particular file. Now it can be done using the copy paste option also, but of course that will not be linked with the source data in the real time manner. So suppose if I go and make any changes in this particular file, suppose I make it, uh, let's say, I'll just delete this whole data for a second. And then if I go and I'll also have to save it. Okay. Let me just make a copy of this data. Okay, now if I go and delete all this data except one line just for the testing purpose and then save it, and then if I refresh this particular thing, it will automatically be refreshed. So if I make any changes in the source file, it will automatically reflect in the output file also. That is the power of the Power Query. Okay, that was just a sample. I will just delete this particular query right now. And then I'll just delete this one. Okay, now I'll again connect this to the latest one. I'll simply use both for now. Okay, now I can see all the data as reflecting in the output file also. I'll just save it for now. Let's go to this. So what I was saying that it automatically converts every steps which you take in the Power Query. It automatically converts into the M language. So I'll just open this Power Query and show that M language. So you can just get into advanced editor and see that the coding is already there without you even writing one single code, single line of the code. So it automatically converts all the steps. So right now we did not take any much of the steps. We just imported the file. So that is why it is saying that source is this, and then it automatically just loads the file, nothing else. So now suppose if you want to delete this particular column, it will automatically add this as a step. And then if you go to the advanced editor, you will be seeing that it has automatically converted the step to the code, the language code. That is the power of this Power Query. I'll just delete this particular step as of now and then load it. Okay, now going further. So this anything that happens in the Power Query and the advanced transformation using the Power Query. So this is a sample code written over here. So what we can see if I try to read this particular code, it says that the source of the file is that exchange. It is trying to pull the data from an email ID. Then what it is doing, it is trying to expand the data and then trying to filter the data with a particular um in a particular column. So basically, it has converted all the data into table and then filtered all those data which has the attachments. So where the attachment is true, then In the next row, it is also trying to put another filter with the subject line, sample file for image to test. So you can also try to read these lines of code. It is just a sample of it. Okay. So where you can use the Power Query. So there are different functionality within the Excel, like and then Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate. So these are few applications where you can use the Power Query. So we'll be exploring this Power Query desktop version right now. Okay. So related content, data source and Power Query. Getting data. Power Query can connect to many different data sources, so you can work with the data you need. Decided to accept Query desktop experience. So basically, it is trying to help us with the way it is set up, connection setting, authentication, data preview, query destination. So basically, when you do the setup, you need to also, like, if you try to get the data from some online sources, you also need to do that into authentication, like user credentials and everything. Then it will give you the data preview, and then you can make any changes with the Power Query and take the output as you require. Most connectors. So basically, it is trying to say that there are many connectors. What is connector? So when you go to this data, these are basically different multiple sources from where you can pull the data. So if I try to explore, you can take the data from the Excel format file, which is saved in your local drive, and then there are multiple formats, but these are all options for the files which are saved in your local drive. Then you can use this online source of data as well, like Azure database, and then these are some options. So I'll just show you some other samples for online version. So maybe I can get into this, and then let me take list of prime ministers of India. I'll get into the Wikipedia page, and then there will be some tables, right? Suppose if I want to import this particular data in this, suppose if I want to import this particular data using Power Query, using the data connector in the Power Query. So what I can do, I can just copy this link, and then I can get into Power Query. I can say that I want to import the data from web. So if you go from other sources from web, then you can just put the link over there. And since there is no user credentials required, so we can just simply keep it basic. And then it will show what are the tables available in that particular web page, which you can import later on. So now I can see what table I need. Do I need? So this taking a phone for, yeah, I believe this is the table which I need. It has the list. So you can simply just load the data and it will give you all the list. So this is the list we wanted. Uh, of course, picture will not be there, names, and then at what age they became the prime minister. So you can see the name is there, and then at what age they became the prime minister. In that name, there is some name, and then terms of office, for what period they were the PM of India. So this is a sample where we can pull the data from the web page also. So we just saw that we can pull the data from the file saved in our local drive, and another was how to connect this to the online version of the data. Now, suppose if someone goes ahead and change this Wikipedia page, and we just do this refresh, it will automatically refresh all those data. So this is the functionality of PowerQuery. Let us use it. Okay. So as I was saying, there are multiple connectors. Right now, of course, I cannot explore much because I do not have the access to all those online versions of the data like SQL Server database. We can create one, but right now we'll just focus on this Power Query option. We'll try to explore it with the resources what we have as of now. In comparison, we'll try to connect. So basically, if you try to connect to, as I was saying, that there are some, when you try to connect to with the online source of the data, and if that data is encrypted or like some authentication is required, you'll also have to provide the user credentials. Why is it required? Because of course, if some company is saving some data in their online version, like online Azure services or AWS, so you need to have some authentication, right? Otherwise, anyone can go ahead and access those data if they have the link or the what do I say, like server address or something. So that is why authentication is there. And then so we'll not be able to use this one. So you can see over there that this is the server address, but then user credentials are also required. You can take the preview and make some changes, which we will explore with the local version of the data. So as I was saying, when you connect to any sort of data, you will be having, you'll be able to see all those tables which are available in the source data. And then you can select whatever the data you require, whatever the table you need to work on it. Okay. Object limitation workaround. So basically, there is a limit of 10,000 list. So in this particular list, what you are seeing right over here, there's a limitation of 10,000. So if there are multiple items like more than 10,000 objects, there, you'll not be able to see that. But that is not limited in the online version. Okay. I like to transform query editor then offensive. Yes, it doesn't know. Okay. So once you select the table in this particular option, you'll be able to see what are the uh, like what are the tables available at the second level of that particular table. So yes, so that table figure. And then this is a sample. Like when you select a particular table, this is how it looks. Then you can like try to load. You can work on it using the transform option, make some changes, or also you can combine with some other tables if required. So let us just see this one, what we can do. So I'll just do this once again. We can just go ahead and use this option, try to connect. So once you try to import the data, you'll be seeing all these options. So as I was saying previously that there was a limitation of 10,000 objects. So suppose if there were 10,000 plus tabs in that particular file, you would be able to see only 10,000 line items, and then after that, it will not be visible. But that limitation is not in the online version. Right now, we are using the desktop version. That is why there is a limitation of 10,000. But again, that is a huge for a normal size of the business. Okay, so once you select this particular table you want to work with, there will be multiple options. So right now, we cannot see combine option. I'm not sure why. So this combine option is not there. Okay, no problem. So you can maybe if we select multiple items, then there will be combine option. No, combine option is not there. Okay, so we can. So that later on. So what you can do, you can directly load the data as we saw previously, and then you can make some changes as well using the transform data options. So once you get into transform data, there will be multiple options. You can delete some columns if you require. You can add some further columns if you require. Suppose this is the unit sold and this is the selling price. So right now you want to calculate what is the total sale value, although it is already mentioned over here. So suppose if you want to create this particular column, so how can you do that? So you can just simply add a column using this add column box, and then you can just total sales column. You want to create total sales by adding this unit sold, and then for multiplication you can use asterisk, and then you can use the sale price. So as you keep going writing this M code, this is a kind of M code, you can say that. So as you keep going on this, working on this, it will be showing whether the syntax is right or not, whether the code is right or not. Suppose if I delete this particular bracket, it will say that the token is missing, right? So you can just simply, like I was using this user interface to write this code. You can just do that also. Unit sold and multiply and then sale price, but you can write it manually as well. So suppose if I just have to do this. So you can just simply select unit sold and then multiply with sale price. So this is also you can use. And then, so even a simple mistake in the code, it will break your code actually. Like the correct bracket should be used and everything. The syntax should be proper. So once you click on this, we have renamed the column as total sales. Once you click, it will create a column using this particular formula which we have wrote in the M code language. So right now you can see, and this is exactly matching with the data which was mentioned. I can just move it to the, just for the comparison purpose. So the gross sales was already there, but we just created a similar column using the code language. So you can see everything is matching, right? So that is working. So you can just add these columns as well. And then as I was saying previously, whatever you do in this particular transform section of the Power Query, every step will be converted into the sorry, I was saying T code. So every steps will be converted into the M code language, and you do not have to write the codes actually for that step. So you can see all the steps. What we did, we imported this, we navigated to that particular sheet which we wanted to pull the data from. Then these are some automated like steps, you can say Power Query automatically applies to the file, which is changing the type of the data based on the data which is present in that particular column. So suppose you can see that a Power Query can understand, okay, this particular column has some numbers, right? So it has automatically converted into the number data type. You can see over here, number, decimal number. Okay. So in this particular column, it could understood that the particular column has some text in the column. So that is why it has automatically changed the type to text. You can also go ahead and change this to something else. So suppose if you want to change it to currency, you can do that. You can insert another column, you can replace it, and then it will be changed to value, saying that this particular column is some currency data, like amount or something like that. So you can do that manually as well. But once you load the data, Power Query automatically tries to identify and do his best, do its best, and then tries to uh, set the data type for a few of the columns for which it can identify. Later on, it also you can change those data types. And then what we did, we removed some sample columns. You can see or see also that we have removed segment column. We added another column using this particular import. You can see that. Then what we did, we moved that particular column from the end of the sheet into the to the bottom of the sheet. So just to see, we can also remove this step if we do not like it anymore, or you can just see the total encode in the advanced editor. So you can do that as well. So this is some sample changes which you can do using the transform options of the Power Query. So that is it. Okay, trans query destination at the stage you specify where to load the query. So now again, when you saw that after making all those changes, what I did, I just simply click on close and load. So when you click on close and load, it will automatically create another tab and load the data. But suppose you do not want to load the data, you want to use it somewhere else. So what you can do, you can just, that option is not coming right now because I've already done that. But anyways, let me do that. So I can do that from over here, load to, and then I can create a connections on this. So basically, there are multiple options. You can import the data and export, like use the table option to reflect on the file, which we have done right now. But suppose you do not want to import the data in this particular file, you just want to use it in some other, maybe keyword or some other query altogether. So you can just create a connection. So what it will do, it will not load the data into this particular file. It will just create a connection to this particular original source of the data, and you can use this Power Query into some power, other query you can say. So I'll just show you that. So suppose this particular query, you have imported the data, right? So this data is also in this source file. And again, that same data is also in your output file. But suppose you do not want to duplicate the data. You just want to use this particular data into some other report. So what you can do, you can just remove this and load it as a connection, and then it will give you that option to use this particular query into some other report. So suppose you just want to see, uh, so there are particular segments, right? How many segments are there? There are multiple segments. Suppose you want to see how much sales you have segment wise. So what you can do, you can use group by option. So it's like pivot options. So you can use group by in the home tab, and you can use, suppose you want to see how much sales you have, and that is the gross sales, and then the sales. Okay. So then it will show you how much sales you have segment wise. So suppose you do not want to have the entire data in this particular file. You just want to use this data so that you can do this pivot. So what you can do, you can just do this close and load, and then you will not have the entire data imported into this particular file. You can just format it as per your requirement. So this is how it is. So what I was referring to. So basically, there are different multiple query destinations also, as I was saying previously. Then Power Query online option, online experience. So this is about Power Query online experience. Right now we are focusing on the desktop version, so we'll skip this one. Again, we do not have any resource to test this, but this is again a very simple thing. You can have multiple source of data. That is quite okay. You just need to have the server address and then credentials to set up the connection with that particular online source of data. So it can be Azure, it can be SQL servers, it can be D365, it can be SAP connections as well. So you just need to have the server address and then user credentials. In the connection settings section, you define the information needed to establish a connection to your data source depending on your correct connector. Information could be the name of the server, name of the database. Again, in order to set up the connection, you need to have these details. So suppose if you want to connect it to the local file, then you have to have the folder path, file path. If you want to connect to the online source of the data, then you need to have the server address, the credentials, and everything. So uh, this is just an example of the server address for the uh, SQL Server database. Okay. Now these are the options for which you need to understand the SQL. We'll just skip it for now. Connection credentials is required to set up the connection. So you can see over here, it is asking for a credential. The primary information, connection name, data gateway, authentication kind of credentials, privacy level. Yeah. Connection settings, server database, connection credentials, connection settings. Okay. So data filter, navigator window, query online. This is a navigator screen where you can navigate what are the tables available. Once you set up the connections, these are the tables which are available to be used. So you can use these tables to procure the data which you need. So this is the navigation window you can see. Table preview, dialog box and Power Query on query editor. So now coming to this query editor option. So as I was saying previously that Power Query has this functionality to convert all the steps into the M code language, but you can also use this advanced Power Query editor to write the code manually. That is quite okay. So suppose I'll just show you some samples as well. So if you try to see this advanced editor, you'll be able to see that okay, it has a let function and then in function. So let function is basically whatever the input you are trying to take, and then in function will always be the output. Again, the name is not matching, but this is how it is. So in function is always like it is the last step where you want to export the data. So that is it. So suppose if you want to create a new query, I'll just try to create one. Let me create a new query. New query and then blank query. Let me rename test. Okay. Now I do not have anything over here to test, right? So I can just get into advanced query and then write the code. So now you can see that let and in functions are already there. You can just expressions, not functions, but you can use it. So let and in expressions are already there. You can just write the next part. So what will be this? So suppose if you want to see let A equals to 5, then B equals to A into 2, and then the output will be B. So this is it. You can just see there were some errors. We need to, okay, we need to define the variables over there. Okay, we will have to see the syntax. It has been quite some time since I've done this. Okay, let me check how to create a variable in PowerQuery. Let me move the profile. So here also you can see that this and then for the people how to create a variable and code variable name and then, yeah. So you can just simply say it should be working is equals to 5 and then b equals to a into 2. Let's see. Mhm. I believe I'm missing some, yeah, yeah. Okay, so what I was missing actually, the advanced code editor, the M code has a functionality that at the end of every line you'll have to enter this comma, but that comma should not be present at the last line. So this is what I was missing. So that's okay. It will just take some uh, quite a few hours in learning any new syntax, so that's quite fine. So yeah, this is how you write any code language. It is a basic, like almost quite basic uh, program, but that's okay. So this is how you can do it. And you can just simply close and load. It will load this data over there. Okay. So now coming back to this. Okay. So you're working on this query editor. You're required to load the data in the Power Query editor. You can further transform. So once you load the data, you can further transform that data. We have already seen we can add columns, delete columns. We can do some formatting. We can change the data types, everything. So additional information, where to get the data. There are multiple sources to get the data. As I was saying, you can explore this get data options. So these are basically sources from where you can pull the data. You can pull the data from SharePoint folder, from a folder, local folder, from PDF file, everything. And these are some online options. So there are around 50 plus sources which are supported in Power Query from where you can get the data. Of course, we cannot explore all of them. So Power Query is actually integrated as a part of the Power BI services as well. And using the Power Query, you can import the data in Power BI as well. So yeah, that is all. Let's just get down. So these are basically connectors. So you can see S/4HANA is also available over here. So you can import the data from SAP as well. MySQL, SQL Server database, your local folder, any PDF file, any local Excel file. There are multiple sources. Get data in PowerQuery. Mm, So this is all about online version, which I'm now going to see. So that is going to speaking that. Get data in Dynamics 365. As I was saying, there are multiple sources supported in Power Query from where you can pull the data. So the Dynamics 365 is another ERP from where you can pull the data. You just need to set up the connections and boom, you have the data. You can play with it. Okay. Get data in Power Automate. Okay. These are some sources we have already seen. So get data is basically all about from where you can pull the data. So we are going to skip this one. Let's get into transform data. Okay, so once you have imported the data, like I will not use the word imported, you can also import the data. You can also set up the connections and not import the data actually into the file, but you can play with it and prepare the reports accordingly without importing the actual data. So suppose if you have the original source file, which has around 7 million line items. Okay. Now, if you try to pull all those 7 million line items in the current file before uh, making a report, so it will be a huge task, right? So Power Query gives you an option to just create a connections with the source of file and then make all those changes which you want to make before importing the data. So suppose I had the I had around 700 line items in this original file, right? So there were 700 line items. Now I do not need to import all those 700 line items before making the report. I can just simply create a connection and then make the changes as per our requirement. And then I can just import this particular table, which is for my use, which I require. So this is the functionality of Power Query. Okay. So Power Query user interface with Power Query, you can connect to multiple data sources, transform the data into the shape you want. How to use, how to perform. Okay. So once you have connected to the data source, again, this connection option is there. You'll have to skip it. So this is all about editing. So this is the main part of Power Query because setting up the connection is not very difficult. Of course, it will be difficult, but it is a one-time thing. Once you set up the connections, you'll not be spending much of your time on the connection part. So once you have set up the connection, you will be mostly spending your time in forming, like in shaping the data in the way you want it. So this is the most important phase in the Power Query. What do I say? Like functions. Okay, represents the Power Query user interface. So these are few areas. This is a basic screenshot of this Power Query I have just shown you. So this is the basic screen of Power Query where you can see on the left hand side there are multiple queries which are available in the file. Then once you select those particular queries on the right hand side, it will show you the steps. So suppose if I select this particular query, it will show me the steps which have been taken in order to prepare this particular file. So if I click on this, it will show you that I have grouped this data using this. Like if I click on this setting option, it will give me the details of what options have I used in order to group this particular data. So I can see right now that it has been grouped using segment and then the name of the column and then what operations I have done. So you can see I can do the average, I can do the sum, I can calculate the min max as well, and on what column I have used this operation. So we can see all that. So this is a basic screen of Power Query. On the top side, you can see multiple ribbons are there. This is home ribbon, transform ribbon, add column, and then the multiple options inside that ribbon. We'll explore all of them one by one. So first one is ribbon, you can see over there. The second one is queries pane, which shows multiple queries which you have on the file. Third is the current view. Basically, there are multiple views. So what is view? So view is basically once you add any step to this file, it will change the view, right? You can see the views are getting changed. So this particular area, this large area is the view of that particular step on which you have clicked. On the right hand side, it will be showing all the steps which you have taken. On the bottom side, it just show the status bar. There's a bar displaying the status, the information about a query. Suppose like how many line items are there. So right now you can see 2 columns, 5 rows. But if I click on the previous step, there were 16 columns, 700 rows. Now it has a limitation of showing only up to 1000 rows. So basically, suppose if a file has more than 1000 rows, it will not show you all the numbers over there. And also you cannot explore like go beyond that 1000 rows. You can just go up to 1000 rows. After that, it will not show you. So basically why it is happening? Because as I was saying previously, that Power Query is not to show you the complete data. It does not encourage you to load all the data in the file. It encourages you to shape your data basically. This particular screen is about shaping your data. And in order to shape the data, in order to understand that what particular data is there in the particular column, I believe 1000 rows are sufficient, right? So that is why to understand a pattern of a particular column, a particular file. So that is where the 1000 column limitation is there, I believe. So yeah, this is it. Once you click on any particular cell, it will show you the details of that particular cell over there. Okay, so schema diagram again. Schema is a different topic. We can see that later on. So basically, it is about connecting multiple tables in order to do some power pivot or something like that. So we are working on this power query, so we'll just do this online for now. Okay, so using the power query editor, the ribbon, you can see the multiple options. You can expand the ribbon um, and hide this ribbon as well. I'm not getting that option because my screen is quite large, so it is showing all those options. So it is not giving you the option to hide or expand because that is not required in my screen size. Okay. This one you can do that if you want. You can just click on this as well. You can do this. Query settings, manage parameters. Mm-hmm. 30 seconds. Yeah. I was looking for this particular window. So once you close this, you can get into view option and then click on query settings to get that back. Okay, so switch between views. Again, we can get into this, and these options are not actually reflecting here because we are actually on the desktop version and this screenshot is for online version. I believe. That is right. Yes. Okay, so right side of the status bar, what is the schema view? So the schema view offers a straightforward way to interact only with the component of the schema pages, such as columns, and data types. We recommend the schema view to the notification. The view. This is actually a schema view, I believe. Okay, begin transforming your data. So you can use the group by option, which we have already seen. You can actually, so group by is basically doing a pivot of the data. So suppose if you want to, I'll just show you some more examples. So you can just do this country wise also. Suppose if you want to see uh, in each of the countries, what product is leading. So first pivot is country and then second is product. And then you can see this. So again, now if I just sort this, so you can see in Canada, we have these different products and then this one is leading actually. Now if I see product wise, so I will have to just remove this and then, so now I can see this particular product is leading in Canada and then the second position would be Germany. Or maybe the first position would be Germany, second would be Canada. So basically, grouping would is just like a keyword. Nothing else. Okay. So next, transform table. Mhm. So this is all about group by adding a new query. You can again add any new query using some further data connectors, which we have already discussed. This is navigator. So basically, out of this 2,300 odd pages, we have covered 118. We are just going through the entire document and see what we can achieve. Okay, so our query and group query with the basic radio button, select control, and merging query. So merging query is just like you can say There are different merge options. So basically one is append, and then append is basically you can just stack multiple queries one after other. And then the other option is to this one merge. So merge option is there to kind of you can do VLOOKUP thing. So suppose this is a table and then we have another table. I'll just duplicate this. So this is financial and this is I'll say country. So I can say this country and this is I can say product. Now suppose if this product uh, in this product code we have units sold. But in this country code, I do not have all this information. I'll just delete all these things. You can delete it like this, right click remove columns, or you can just simply select whatever you want. लागবে না দাদা! You can just remove other columns. So now suppose if you want to pull this particular data unit sold from this table to this table. Okay. So what you can do is just do group by and then country. I'll do sum and then I'll do cross sales. Now if I do again the same thing, country and then we have I do not like this. So then we have nothing. We just need country. Okay. So now if I want to pull this particular sale value to this table, so what we can do, or maybe I can pull this value, the count, to this table. So what we can do, we can just use merge queries. There are two options, merge queries and merge as new. If you select merge queries, it will be done in the same query. If you do not want to disturb this particular query, you can just use the merge query as new. So I'll use merge query as new. I do not want to disturb the existing query, so that we can compare both the queries. So we have product, we have country, and we can see the identifier, the unique identifier can be the country. And I want to pull this particular sales data to this particular table. So what we can do, I can use this linear only matching tool and then all five of five are matching. I can just do okay. And then it has created another table, another query you can say, where we have country, where we have sales. And now if I click on this, it also has all these data from this country table. Now I do not need the country column because I already have this country column. I just need the count. So what I can do, I can just do this. And I do not need the original query name. So I'll just untick that one as well. Now I can see we have country, we have sales, and we have count. So this is basically a merge query option where we can do the VLOOKUP kind of thing and procure the data from other tables, other queries. Okay. So yeah, that is it. Merge query. So we have seen merge query, country analysis, merge query. So there are multiple join, inner join, external join, right matching, left matching, only matching. So there are multiple options. So basically, um, I'll just click on this. So when I click on this option, there are multiple join kinds. So basically, it is like completely self-explanatory. So you can see left outer means all from the first and then matching from the second. So it will take, so suppose I'll just show you some examples. So suppose this particular table do not have this, does not have this United States of America. I'll just remove this row. Oh, sorry. So I'll just delete the last column, last row. So it does not now have the United States data. So now this table also does not have that data, right? So why is it happening? Because we have selected only matching. So even though the United States was present in the previous table, but not in the later one, that is why it did not have it is not present in the final table as well. But if I select all from the first, so what it will do, it will keep the original table and pull all the data, whatever it can match with the original table. But it will prioritize the first table only. So now I can see we have the United States of America, even if we do not have this count data for United States. So there are multiple join kinds. You can select as per your requirement. I just did a sample to explain. Okay, so yeah, that is it. Next, select a table, matching columns to create. I've seen that. I've seen this. These are multiple join kinds. You can see over here, left outer, right outer, full outer, inner, only the matching rows, which we had selected in the first option. Left anti, it means all from the right and also the matching. Right anti means all from the left and also the ones which are matching. So these are basically self-explanatory, so I would not get further into this. Okay, so that is it. Next. Mm-hmm. Note of this expand operation as a table. So after merging the queries, we use the expand option. That is what it is. Applied steps we have already seen. On the right hand side, we have applied steps. It actually gives the details of whatever the steps you have taken to create this particular view. So these are applied steps. You can see over here. You can also put the details of this um, step if you want to. So suppose we can just double click like this. Okay, and then you can put the description. You can change the name also in order to like this will let the Power Query will give the automated name kind of thing. But if you want to rename to a particular thing just to explain it to the other users will be going to use this particular query. So you can rename, can add some explanations also in the properties that what this step is all about. Yeah, so that is it. So basically this particular step is reordering columns, but which column? It does not give that information in here. So what you can do, you can just add the description that it reorders this particular column from this column to this column. Something like that. You can add all those descriptions. Adding a new column, you can add new column. We have already seen this. You can add new column from here using custom. There are multiple options using invoke function as well. Invoke function basically gives you the ability to use the encoded language uh, to add another column in the table. So yeah, that is it. In the function, this change creates a meeting. So talking about the invoke function, basically I wanted to explain this a bit more. So invoke function is basically suppose this is a source data, right? This is a source data, and suppose you want to filter it for Germany. Okay. But suppose this particular filter is not fixed every time. So sometime you may want to filter it with Canada. Sometime you may want to filter it with France. So in that case, when you want to change the parameters for the filters or for something else, like you want to change the parameter which are to be later on used for another step in a particular query, then you need to create a function and then you can invoke that function over it. Right now, you would not be seeing any option here. There is no function query because I have not created any function query as of now. We can see that later on. So basically, you can create a function query. I'll just show you how to do that. So basically, you can create a function. You can just create a blank query and then create a function query here by writing that code. I'll have to see the syntax for that. So you can create that and use that later on in this particular table. Just give me a moment. Just give me a moment. Okay, so later on you can use that function uh, in this and export that data. So basically, it gives you the flexibility to use multiple parameters in a particular step. That it. That is all. Of course, we will explore this further in detail. Data profiling. So data profiling basically. So data profiling is basically it gives you the like uh, when you try to write something, right? So it gives you the grammatical checks and everything. So data profiling is like that. So it will give you the health of your column. So suppose if I add, if I activate the data profiling, let me check that. Data profiling. I want to see where are those options because I've not used much. Mhm. Column quality. So basically, this is data profiling. All I have to is confirm another PowerQuery actions with data profiling by enabling the profiling feature. Look at this. How to activate this? So this is data profiling. Yeah. So we have just activated the data profiling for this particular query right now. So it gives you the health checkup for that particular column. So it says that all the data present in this particular column are matching with the data type which we have selected. So suppose if I change this, can I change it? No, I'll have to change in the source data. Let me check. Okay, let me just save it now. Let me open this and suppose I write here. So basically what I'm trying to say that this particular column is not for text data, right? This is for a number data. It should be having some kind of number, how much unit you have saved. You cannot have any text data in this particular column. So suppose if I put a text data in a column which is supposed to have the number data types. So what will happen? So now if I go and check the hill, and if I do this refresh, so now it will say that there is some error in this particular row, right? Why is it happening? Because I have entered the text data type in a column which is supposed to have the currency data type or the uh, no, it is same currency, but we can go ahead and change it to decimal number as well. It will give you the same error because anyways it is not matching with the text data, right? So, so data profiling is basically gives you the health of a particular column, whether the whole column is having the same data type as you have given, or maybe the Power Query has automatically assigned to a particular column. So this is all about data profiling. So data profiling ensures that all the data present in a particular column are matching as per the data types. So it basically focuses on the data types. Yeah, that is it. So moving on. Okay, next data profiling. Advanced editor, we have already seen the sample of it. Mm, one, we have already seen the sample, but of course it is not a complete. We'll have to see the syntax for all of the encodes. So that is what will take a lot of time to go through that. Accessing Power Query Help, Power Query Connection, Power Query Help and Power BI. Also, links to Power Query documentation, submit and do ID, help for Power Query and functions. Using the applied steps list. Again, how we can access by this query settings. Hmm, let's say view, go to query settings, and then you can access the applied steps. I've already seen that. This is how you can delete a particular steps if you do not need it any further. So delete steps, step icon, step name, step settings, query folding indicator. These are few options. Step menu selection, same choose. This is how you can change the settings of the previous steps as I was showing previously. So suppose I have grouped this particular table, right? So you can click on settings and you can change the setting if you want to group it with some other settings, like some other parameters. Suppose if you want to group it using segment. Now if I do it, it will disturb the merge query, but let me do that anyways. So now if you go to merge query, it will not merge because using the while doing this merge query, we had selected the country as the unique identifier. So now that unique identifier is not even present in the product column. So that is why it is not. uh, matching, and it is giving right now an error. But if you go ahead and change it again, if you do this change again, it will be okay now. So yeah, that is it. Next, rename steps. We have already seen that. Delete until end. So, I'll have to restart this. Okay, so delete. We have already seen that. Insert step after. We have seen that. In between the steps, you can add some more steps if you want. So suppose I want to add a step in between these steps. So I can just do that. Anything like suppose if you want to change data types, if you want to remove or add something, if you want to merge anything, you can add. Insert the step after move step. You can also move the steps from here to here. But of course, in order to do that, all the steps should be aligned. Like you cannot group before changing the type of the like no. So you cannot change the type after grouping the table. Why? Because once you group the table, all those columns are not even present in this particular view. So right now in this particular step, changing the types, you are trying to change the type of these particular columns. But after you have already done the grouping, those columns are not even present in this particular view. So how can you change that type? So basically you can move all these up and down, but unless it makes sense, it will not give you the property. So, but yes, you can move up and down. Okay. So applied steps. You can rename. Yeah, that is all. Global search box. I believe that is not present in PowerQuery. Desktop version. I'm not sure why it is showing over here. Let me check that. The global search of non query from. Mm, Yeah, I'm not sure why it is not reflecting in my version, but yeah, there must be some issue with the version of the application, or maybe because I'm using the Power Query desktop version. Yeah, whatever it is, but it is a version issue. Okay, so we'll have to skip this one as well. Overview of the query evaluation. Mhm. This. Okay. So previous image of the source. It shows the applied steps. Make the connection. So using the source, you can make the connection with the source data, navigation. To, it can be used to go to a particular table in the source data. You can remove table, you can sort the rows, you can keep the top rows. So by keeping the top rows, it means, so basically suppose if this is the table and this is the top row, right? You do not want to change it. But suppose if someone wants to keep this particular row as a top row. So what they can do, they can just simply, sorry, they can just simply use the header. So it will just promote the first row as the headers. And of course, it will not work because we have activated this data profiling and everything. So making any changes in this particular file right now make it difficult. So this is it. This is the advanced editor option where you can see all the M codes, which is automatically written by PowerQuery using all the steps you have taken to shape your data. Okay, query following overview. Let us see what is query following. The goal of query following is to offload or push as much of the evaluation of the data source that can compute the transformations of the query. Mhm. And if that's what it is, and if it's just the evaluation to the data. So basically, there are two ways. So basically, suppose when I was saying that we can add another column of gross sales calculation or the total sales calculation. So in this particular example, when I was showing how to calculate this total sales, we can do that by multiplying units sold with the selling price, and we have used what do I say like M code to write this particular column. So in that particular example, what we did, we created this calculation, we created this column, we added this column using all those calculation in our local drive and not into the uh, source data, right? But in this particular option, query folding, so it basically what we do, we write all this code in a language which can be interpreted by the source data. So suppose my source data is in SQL, it is in SAP. So we can write that code in SQL language or the SAP language, which is KBAP. We can write those codes in those languages, which can be interpreted by the source data servers, and they can do all those calculations before sending that data to us. So right now, what is happening? We are procuring all these data or all these columns and then doing this calculation, right? But it will be quite heavier if the data is too much. So suppose if the data is huge, if like I was giving the previous example, if we have 7 million or 17 million line items, so then the calculation will be difficult if we try to pull all the data first into our local system and then do the calculation. So it will be easier if we do the calculation at the server side itself before pulling that data. So yeah, that is that is it. So full query following when all the query transformations get pushed back to the data source and minimum processing occurs at the PowerQuery engine, partial, no query following. Okay, query folding example scenarios. So this is again giving you a scenario where the query folding can be utilized. So in this example, let us see that example first. So I will provide some example where the query folding can be used. It also includes some suggestion on how to get the most of a query folding mechanism effect and the effect that it can have in the query. So imagine a scenario where using the wide world importer database for Azure signups and then Azure Analytics SQL database. We are tasked with creating a query in a Power Query that connects the fact sales table and retrieve the last 10 sales. So basically, this is a fact table, and then you are supposed to retrieve the last 10 sales with only the following fields. So you are supposed to pull out the data for only last 10 sales. You are not supposed to pull out all the sales data. You are supposed to pull out only the last 10 sales. So then, if you suppose, like I was saying, what you can do, you can pull all the data from the database into your local drive and then calculate what is the last 10 cells. Or in the other way, in this particular method which we are talking about, what we can do, we can write a code which will be executed at the server's end and they will calculate the last 10 cells and then send you the result. So these are two basic options, and of course, the last option is the best one. So it gives you that scenario. So the main difference in the article is taxable scenario for the year 2000 with a total of itna rows. So basically, like I was saying, if the data is huge. So right now in this scenario, we have a huge data, which is about 3.6 million, while the result might not exactly match the result. Mm, the article showcases three ways to achieve the same output. No query folding. So no query folding method, you can just import all the data to your local drive and then calculate manually what is like when I'm saying manually, of course it is not manually, it is like uh, executing the codes at your local engine. So queries that rely solely on unstructured data sources don't have a compute engine such as CSV or Excel file don't have query folding capability. So basically these are some files which do not have any query folding capabilities. This means that Power Query evaluates all the required data transformations. After connecting this, so basically it is saying that if you have the source data in CSV or Excel file format, you cannot use the query folding options there because of course they do not have any um compute engine to execute all those codes by themselves. It can be done using the SQL Server database. It can be done using some online data sources because they have their own compute engine. That is what it is saying. Okay, after connecting to your database and navigating to this fact sales table, you select the key bottom. After you select the transform, undo dialog. So then you can use this bottom row. You can use this functionality to keep the last 10 sales. So this is an option. This is a scenario where no query folding option is being used. Okay. So all the calculations were done locally. That is what it means. Here we can see query plan. So we have a data connector and then tables. and this is SQL database. So SQL database is a data connector, and then value table, and then this is our output which we want. So we can see this is the function which we have deployed to calculate the last 10 sales. Mm, Okay, so consulting this data source request can help you better understand this. SQL database does not represent the data source access connects to database and sends the data request to understand its capabilities. Represent the request that was generated by PowerQuery to fulfill the query. PowerQuery submits the data request and PowerQuery also uses the output. Okay. So that was an example of no query folding where all the computation was being done at local engine by using the Power Query. So partial query folding example wherein a partial computation is done at the data source and partial it is done by the Power Query. Like we choose columns, manage ascending to the bottom 10. So we can see this is a connection to the data source. This is again connection to a particular schema and the table. This is a table, first column, and again navigation to this particular columns, and then sorting, and then keeping the last 10 rows. So all the calculations are being done at Power Query level. Okay, this is again another example which is being fully done at the uh, server level. Mm-hmm. Commerce comparison. So here we can see that with no query folding, because Power Query is doing all those calculations, that is why it is taking a lot of time because it has to firstly pull all those data, use data, and then do the calculation. But in the query folding mode, what it is doing, it is only sending the query to the server, and then server is doing all those calculations and then sending the final result to the Power Query. So that is why it is taking less amount of time. It basically helps you to optimize your reports, how quickly you can refresh all those reports. So suppose if you want a real-time report, so you cannot have this particular connection set up because it will take a lot of time. Okay, the time transit. Okay, so I believe we have covered 183 pages. We can go, we can take some break and then take it further. Okay, thank you.